let's welcome in the professor because there's a lot going on with the Supreme Court and lawfare and insanity in the country. And obviously, there's nobody better at breaking this nuttiness down than Bill Jacobson, professor, Cornell University law professor, I should point out, and founder of Legal Insurrection, which I've loved for years. It makes me sound smarter on the radio. Okay, Bill, the Supreme Court, they did us right on immigration, right? What happened?
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court paused a lower court order which prevented the government from removing people who've already gone through the judicial process. They've had their hearings, they've had their due process, they've been ordered removed from the country. Some countries won't take them because they're such bad people, the crimes they've been convicted of. But the government did find South Sudan would take them through diplomatic means and was about to send, I think it's 8 people or 6 people to South Sudan until a Massachusetts district court judge says you can't do that because you need to give them another hearing. And the other hearing is notice and hearing as to whether they have a reasonable fear of being tortured if they're sent to South Sudan or some other country under the Convention Against Torture. So this would be like the second or third round of due process that they would get. And the Supreme Court put a stay on that. The Supreme Court said, no, we're putting your order on hold. Unfortunately, that's not the end of it because this district court judge just yesterday, after seeing what the Supreme Court had done, said, well, wait a second, this doesn't really apply to me, to what's in my court, because I also, in an order that wasn't before the Supreme Court, added additional remedies, and that remedy order wasn't before the Supreme Court. So really, a district court judge, some people have described it as defying the Supreme Court. I think that's close to true, certainly trying to get around the Supreme Court ruling with what I consider to be a hyper-technical and not accurate recitation of what the Supreme Court did. So that's where we are. Supreme Court did good. Government's back before the Supreme Court. As of 2 minutes ago, court had not yet ruled, saying, wait a second, this judge is totally out of line. Please enforce your order.
Okay, well, I guess we'll take that. How did this idiot judge even get there?
How did he get on the court? Well, he was one of the last Biden appointees. I think he was in December, if I'm recalling correctly. And 4 Republican senators never bothered to show up to vote against him. So he got by on a 47-45 vote, as did many of the late-term Biden judges who've created so many problems. Republicans didn't show up. And so people should not be angry about the situation. I mean, of course, Biden's going to want to get judges he likes on the court. But when we don't even show up, when our side doesn't even show up to vote no, and there are numerous judges who got in late in Biden's term because judges didn't show up. And for this particular judge, Vance didn't show up. And I think it was Rubio didn't show up, and 2 other Republicans didn't show up to vote against him.
Interesting how that ended up working out for the same administration. Okay, let's shift gears here. Why is this Garcia guy free now?
Well, he's not free yet. There's an issue about he was granted bail. Essentially, he's got criminal charges against him, and just like any criminal defendant, they go before a magistrate judge, and magistrate judge decides whether you get bail, and the judge said he's entitled to bail, which is kind of crazy in itself. Doesn't mean he's going to go free yet because ICE still has a detainer on him. And this will go to the full district court judge and eventually to appeals, whether in his criminal matter, he gets bail. And so that's what it is. He's not been released yet. He's got very serious criminal charges against him. It's somewhat outrageous that a judge would find that this person is not a threat to society, that this person is not a flight risk, et cetera. At the end of the day, though, he's not going anywhere because ICE has a hold on him because he's been ordered deported.
What about Mohammed?
So,
What about Mohammed Khalil?
Yeah, that's the Columbia University agitator, anti-American, obviously anti-Israel agitator, the guy who helped run the group that wreaked havoc on Columbia's campus, that intimidated people, that in many ways got Columbia into a lot of the trouble they're in with the Trump administration, and even the Biden administration to some extent, lesser extent. And so he was being held by ICE pending deportation. And a judge ruled that he's not a flight risk because they're going to confiscate his passport, and he's not a danger to the community, and that pending his deportation proceedings, he's allowed to be free. So what did he do? He immediately went back and started with the anti-American rhetoric, the anti-Israel rhetoric, leading rallies, leading protests. I mean, this is the worst of society. I mean, you've got to look at our situation and really marvel at what the Biden administration, and the Biden administration is really the Obama holdovers, it's really Team Obama, how much damage they caused to our society, because they understood that if you let in at least several million people, and then you impose barriers to deporting them, everybody gets a hearing, gets a second hearing, gets a third hearing potentially, that you can't deport people. You can't get them out of the country in any expeditious fashion. And so let them all in without any checks and make it very difficult to get them out of here. And that's really what we're seeing is the havoc wreaked by the Biden administration and the Team Obama people who were running the administration, swamping our country with either illegal people, people who are here illegally, with criminals, and with anti-American agitators who have no business being here in the first place.
Bill, let me ask you this question in the lamest way possible, but by now you understand how uneducated I am. So I'm just going to ask it in this way. They put up all these barriers so we can't deport people. And then we get a ruling here and a ruling there and a ruling from the Supreme Court. Is there going to be a moment at any point where the last of the barriers have been battered down and we can deport all these people? Or is it going to be 4 years of battering this one down and then there's another one? Are we up for 4 years of this, or at some point are we going to cross the last hurdle? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, with Congress unable to do just about anything because any significant change to the immigration laws would never get through the Senate because of the filibuster. So unless there's some change in the law, people are going to be entitled to these hearings. Now, a lot of people are so-called self-deporting, and that probably is the ultimate answer. If you cut off their ability to get jobs here, if you cut off their benefits, if you cut off the welfare state that supports people who are here illegally, they're going to leave. And a lot of people have left the country, so-called self-deported, and made it easier for them to self-deport. And if you self-deport, you're not permanently barred from re-entering the country. So I think it's a combination of pushing forward on all fronts, creating barriers to people sustaining themselves economically here if they're here illegally. But yeah, this is a major problem and nobody should kid themselves about it. I think that it would be an enormous benefit if we get a ruling from, through Congress or through the courts that you don't count these people in the census. Because one of the reasons the Democrats like this is the illegal alien population tends to congregate in blue states, and they are counted for the census. I've seen estimates, I don't know how accurate they are, that Democrats have picked up at least several congressional seats and several electoral college votes by reason of counting illegal aliens in the census. And so it's not a great situation. I mean, immigration is the number one issue. And I think Trump was right to focus on it heavily. And I think he's got to just keep pushing forward. But there are these barriers. The Supreme Court hopefully will review some of these things and open them up. But when we have district court judges who, like the one right now that's back in the Supreme Court, look at a Supreme Court ruling and say, well, yes, you put a stay on my preliminary injunction, but you didn't put a stay on the thing I did after the preliminary injunction. Therefore, it doesn't matter. The Supreme Court needs to get tough with these judges. And we've been talking about this. I've talked about it many times on your show, that until John Roberts and the rest of the Supreme Court starts adequately addressing the district courts who have become extremely activist, extremely litigious as judges. They seem to be advocates for a position. Not all of them, but many of them. Until the Supreme Court gets tougher with that, this is going to continue.
Bill, as always, thank you. Appreciate it.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.